Come on, let's get going. I've got a football match to watch.
Boom, 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 boom. 4 men in a wormhole. Hello and welcome to episode 6 of 4 Men in a Wormhole. I'm Stephen Gurvitz, your host, and joining me as ever is the good-looking Adam Leach.
Good afternoon, and hello, fellow wormies.
Are we wormies? Worms?
I don't know, what is the collective noun for
That can be
participants?
I don't know. That could be a whole section or feature in itself. Before we get on to that,
it could be Toll's feature.
It could be Toll's feature. So before we get to that, hello, Toll Silverman.
Hello, and Stephen, I'm really enjoying the blue hue to your shiny paint.
head.
That's the LED lighting I have in
I like that. It works very well with your the deck behind you. Yeah, I like that.
That's right. And Simon Cohen, hello. You're coming out of a Dalek.
Yeah, and I think that the Dalek is the thing causing the blue hue over your face.
Like
yeah, I'm aiming at you. But anyway, hello.
Hello. And actually, before we go into the this week's program, as it were, I think Adam has raised actually a really good issue to raise. What are we? Are we wormers? Are we wormies? Are we worms?
I don't think we should be worms. I think wormies. I think we're wormies.
Wormies is good.
On Twitter, I've been welcoming people to the wormhole.
Wormies does imply that we have more than one listener if we need a collective noun.
No, we're the wormies.
Well, we're the wormies.
Yeah.
Or like collectively, us and our listeners are wormies. I've been welcoming people to the wormhole. I stopped from welcoming people to our wormhole because I thought that sounded rude.
Yeah.
I did the wormhole as opposed to our wormhole.
How do we spell wormers or wormies? What are we?
Wormies. Yeah, IES, WO.
We're wormies.
Yeah,
wormies. Okay, so we're wormies, and I'd like to bless our listenership as saying you are now all honorary wormies with us. Welcome to the world of the wormhole, and with that we will kick off. And this is our New Year episode. Obviously, the new year has passed, but that gives us an opportunity to look back at 2020. And as we know, it was quite some year. But what's really, really good is that 2021 is becoming even more of an interesting year. So it has eclipsed 2020 perhaps already. But so this is our look back at all the things science, sci-fi, of course, in 2020, our individual highlights, but we're going to try and limit it to one thing. And so we're going to dive in with Mr. Leach straight away and ask you to present to the listenership, the viewership, depending how they're reaching us, what your individual highlight was for 2020.
Yeah, so it was, for obvious reasons, it's an interesting year, and sort of normal patterns that I had when I'd read books or watch TV all changed. So there was certainly less books that I was reading, but there was one sci-fi book that I think sort of stood out to me, a trilogy that I read by John Scalzi. Now, John Scalzi is a American sci-fi author. He's award-winning. He's sort of notable for a book called Old Man's War, which is like a military sci-fi book. I haven't read that. But the reason I know about John Scalzi, I know Simon is always going, well, Adam, you're so like learned with all the books and stuff, is that I didn't know anything about John Scalzi until Simon recommended a book to me called Red Shirts.
Red Shirts, yeah.
Can I just check, has Simon actually said you're learned?
Well, I don't know. He uses word like.
I think I might have done. Yeah, I think I may have said he was learned. Yeah, maybe with some sarcasm. But Red Shirts is one of the few books that I've read actually, and I do remember recommending that to you. Great.
Yeah, which is a great book, really good. But it was a couple of years ago. So on the basis of that, I thought, well, that Red Shirts was quite good. So I sort of knew the author and tried this one. And the trilogy that I read is called The Collapsing Empire, and it's a kind of space opera. It's set sort of out in space, not in our solar system, and it has this kind of interesting premise of that there's no faster than light travel, but there's certain places that are connected, kind of like through what calls them via the flow, which is but basically certain places of space you can get to through these wormholes, through this flow. And then because of this, we've gone from Earth to inhabit these other places, and then we've lost touch with Earth, and we've created what he calls in the book the interdependency, which are these worlds that aren't self-sustaining but all rely on each other. And there's an emperor, there's a kind of a monarchy that kind of rules over the interdependency, and there's noble. It's a bit kind of Game of Thrones like. There's kind of noble houses and trade houses and trade guilds, and it's quite some really interesting characters. It's really easy to read, and really the characters are quite sort of foul-mouthed, sweary types, quite sort of straight-talking, sort of interesting characters he does. And there's this kind of the world is interesting, and then there's this I guess parallel with the flow is changing, and the flow is about to change, which is going to disrupt the interdependency. But despite the overwhelming scientific evidence from the scientific community, everyone that's involved in the interdependency basically refuses to take any action. So the parallel is very clear. It's like climate change. He doesn't ram that down your throat at all. It's not, like a star. It's not like you can't enjoy it because he's sort of peddling the message of climate change. But there's interesting parallels in the story to that. I actually listened to it on audio. It's read by Will Wheaton, who obviously kind of does from Star Trek fame, is great voice actor, so brings it to life really brilliantly. I'd really recommend it. So that was my highlight, sort of reading through, sort of discovering this new world, this new universe that he creates, and reading through the books with the interesting characters. And I just recommend it. It was a highlight from my sci-fi year last year, I think.
Excellent. Simon, you had your hand up.
Well, I just you said it was sort of quite easy reading. Similar to Red Shirts, which is quite an easy read. So so you don't need to be as learned.
You don't have to be learned at all. You need to, as long as you can just listen to a book, it's fine.
Excellent. And a shout out to Will Wheaton, who obviously, I'm pretty sure, if he's not already, will soon be a worm.
I'm sure he's a worm.
He's probably really listening.
He's brilliant. I think he makes it to a certain extent. I think he reads all of John Scalzi's audio stuff, and I believe that's how Ernest Cline discovered Will Wheaton to use him on his audio books, was through his work with John Scalzi.
Ah, excellent. Well, thank you for that, Adam. I think it's my turn next, and I'm going to reveal my highlight. Even though having thought about it, if we go back to our very first episode, we have to ask is it sci-fi or not?
No.
Yes. My highlight was The Mandalorian 2. I've enjoyed quite a lot of stuff this year. I have to say, at the top, I think is it the beginning of the year or the end of last year, or did it cross over? When was the first season of Picard, Simon?
This season. This year. Sorry, 2020. Yeah.
Okay, so Picard is definitely up there. Definitely up there. The latest series, The Expanse, is up there. And going back to the book club that Adam mentioned, I don't think it's great literature, but in terms of just story, I'm starting to get into Ready Player 2, and that's been fun. But the biggest surprise for me was The Mandalorian 2, simply because whilst The Mandalorian 1 was beautifully filmed, I thought it was not that an exciting series. And Mandalorian 2 really stepped it up a level. We've discussed this on previous weeks, but it really stepped it up a level. Adams, you got a question?
So I'm playing catch up with Mandalorian. I've watched season 1, which I really quite liked. I'm doing season 2 now, and I'm watched a couple of episodes in season 2. And there's one episode where they go to, I'm going to say it wrong, Tatooine, which I think is Luke Skywalker's home planet, and they go there. But they've been there a few times, and there's like a sandworm. I mean, did sandworms exist in the Star Wars universe before they appeared in that Mandalorian?
You mean the massive monster they have to kill?
Yeah. It was like a sand shot, but it lived. I think crucially, like the Dune things lived in the sand.
Well, I've seen it in Dune, and of course, originally in Tremors.
Yes.
I don't think they mentioned it, but we only saw a very small part of Tatooine. They're allowed to invent some new ideas. They don't have to limit the universe to what we've only ever seen in.
No, but I just wondered whether there was any form to that kind of sound, because it seemed very Dune-esque to me. And with Dune about to come to the film again, I was just like, oh, this is interesting. They've chosen to use that sort of creature.
Well, I can't remember what was the name of the creature that ate Boba Fett originally.
Yeah, outside Jabba's palace.
That's not a but that was a thing, though, isn't it?
No, but that was known as the Snarl Pit or something, meaning that thing only lives in that pit.
Well, that was exactly.
I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I think it's a similar type of.
No, well, that's what stopped me asking the question on Twitter, because I thought, oh, I'm about to make myself look stupid by not knowing what that sand monster in Return of the Jedi was called. So that's why I thought I'd bring it up in this safe space. I can ask.
Yes. Well, one, you're learned, so you could never look stupid, and two, I think it is a new idea, but it does fit into the whole roughness of Tatooine. Taking into account we know about the thing in the pit from Return of the Jedi. So I don't think it was. I don't think it was out of context to the kind of creatures you'd get there. Put it that way.
So Stephen, in terms of on the Mandalorian, then in terms of where would you rank it or rate it compared to the other Star Wars movies and shows?
Well, I think I've said previously that my favourite Star Wars movies outside of the original old trilogy was Rogue One and Solo. And I'd put The Mandalorian 2 up there with them because it's gritty. You've got gritty characters, going back to how all of us have been disappointed with Discovery, where everyone's not gritty. It's got gritty characters with sarcasm and bite and humour.
Oh, yeah. There's humour in it, definitely. Which is really refreshing.
Yes, and it's not. It's actually interesting. I was on YouTube and I was watching. You see little snippets of movies that come up in your feed, and there was a snippet from The Force Awakens, and I actually forgot about this scene. It must be the best scene in the whole film, because the whole film again looks beautiful, but I don't like any of the latest films. But it's a scene with Chewbacca, Han Solo, and what's the character's name? The guy who was a stormtrooper but then changed his side.
Finn.
Finn.
Is the actor,
exactly. Finn. So and they're trying to break into the base to rescue what's her face and blow up it all up. Anyway, there's Han Solo essentially says to him, what did you used to do when you were based here? Because he knows his way around, and he goes, well, I was the janitor or something like this. And then Han Solo makes some quip about you were the janitor, and then Chewbacca makes a noise, and Han Solo goes, you're cold, and because it's always a snowy planet, and actually it made me suddenly click. They had hardly any of that humor throughout the 3 latest movies.
Yeah.
So that's why that scene stood out, because they had hardly any of that. Because actually, it was all a bit woke-ish. It was all a bit sanctimonious-ish. So going back to The Mandalorian too, yeah, I really like it with Solo and with Rogue One, because it's got the bite, it's got the angle, it's got laughs at itself, laughs at the other characters, and it's not too politically correct. Adam?
Well, I was just going to say, I think you're right. Humour makes the biggest difference to me if I'm watching anything. I mean, the reason why I'd prefer Marvel over DC is because it's got some humour. And when you're watching stuff that, to be honest, even though we love it, it's all plainly ridiculous. For me, it needs a bit of humour to not take itself too seriously. And as soon as it does, to me, it just becomes. Yes.
I'll come to you in a minute, Simon. Actually, that's a good point, because you said, unlike DC, one of the best bits that stands out in my mind in the first Batman versus Superman movie was when Batman saves Superman's wife, and he goes something like, "Don't worry, I'm a friend of your son's," and then she says, "Yes, I can tell by the cape." Yeah, Simon.
Well, I was just going to say that a couple of things. The humor in The Mandalorian, I think, is very different to the humor in other Star Wars shows. It's certainly not in your face. It's not. There's very few sort of quippy one-liners like you'd get from Han Solo, and a lot of it's based around Baby Yoda as well. But I love that about the show. And the other thing that's interesting is, I think that So the problem with the final trilogy, in my view, and I did like those movies, but they were very samey. And Adam, you say this a lot, that they're rehashing old ideas, and they just did that multiple times in those last few movies. But The Mandalorian and maybe Rogue One as well, I think, prove that there are other ways to tell a Star Wars story really well. And that you don't need to go back to the same old ideas and the same style and the same storylines. And The Mandalorian did that fantastically, because it's a very different feel to it.
Could I just say one of my favourite bits of The Mandalorian, I think it was in season 2, was when you had the scouts on the bikes, and they were being held outside the city. They just took out their blasters and tried to do the shooting practice.
That's
and
a great,
that's a great wrong with these things. That to me was very funny. I thought that.
Which you'd never get in a movie.
No,
and that's what is really good. And no, you say that if you go back to Rogue One and the Solo movie, you've kind of got little things like that. It's very it's very knowing about itself. And actually, it really does make you look back at the latest trilogy and just think, what a lost opportunity. Because I think your point, Simon, is what I'm trying to say. Your point, Simon, is actually bang on. There are other ways and better ways of telling Star Wars stories. And when you now look at the latest trilogy, it seems like it's like they had 3 attempts to tell the same story almost, and never quite managed to make it work. And actually, they were trying to be big. They were trying to be big and spectacle. And I know. And actually, if they'd gone for something smaller, more mysterious, obviously now that the Empire's destroyed and gone into some more delicate story, it could have been just as gripping. Because Solo doesn't have a big spectacle to it, but it's a gripping story, and I think hopefully they've learned enough to bring that to the future movies they learn. So, but anyway, that's been my highlight of the year. And moving on, we have Simon. We have Star Trek.
Well, yeah, I know I do talk about Star Trek a lot, and I apologise, but
I hadn't noticed.
No, but I think we had more Star Trek in 2020 than any other year that I can remember. With the new Picard show, with season 3 of Discovery, and with the cartoon Lower Decks, which actually hasn't been out in the UK but is out, I think, at the end of this month. It's out on Amazon Prime. But it's just been a Star Trek fest. We haven't had to wait very long, and given that we've gone many years without anything, it's just been wonderful to have so much Star Trek. Has it all been good? Has it all been brilliant? It's not been perfect in my view, but that doesn't stop it from being a highlight for me. I think Picard was a really good show. Took a while to get going, but ended up being very, very good. I think Discovery is littered with problems, but I still think it's very good. And I'd certainly rather it was on than not on. And I can talk for ages about I think we could all criticise various things in Star Trek Discovery, especially those annoying little robots that turned up at the end of the season. But despite that, I still think it was a very good show. So yeah, absolutely, it's been a Star Trek year, and there's more to come as well. With they're making another season of Discovery and Picard, and there's various other spin-offs with Section 31 and the one with Pike and Spock coming up.
Are they doing a Section 31 spin-off? Are they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I don't know when it's out, but that's with Emperor Giorgio, who I know you haven't watched all of Discovery, but she sort of disappeared halfway through the season.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure when it's set either. But yeah, it's great to see so much Star Trek back on the telly, with lots more to come as well. So great year for me.
Yeah, I think Star Trek has been, as you said, it's just been so exciting to have Star Trek back. There's always a risk of too much Star Trek, because that was one of the theories as to why it died off after Enterprise. But I think with the new way that we consume content, it's easier to find its market, because whereas when Enterprise was on, there was only so many TV stations, only so many syndication options. It was harder to find the audience. But now I actually think they've got there's a better world for Star Trek for those of us that want it almost all the time. It's not fighting for space in such the same way. We can go to it. Discovery, I think, has many issues, but then again, I know I've said in this podcast before, I've had issues with it from season 1. I've watched everything, but I have many seasons. The one thing I will say, and spoiler alerts here, but remember we're not against spoilers, but spoiler alert is has now ended with her Burnham being the captain, and that may actually help rebalance it, because it's been ridiculous that the person who's at the center of everything, it makes a joke of it. It's like the only person who can make it all work is her. It'd be like having Shatner as the junior engineer, but everything revolves around him. But at least now she's the captain, so that may actually rebalance it for season 4. Adam?
Yeah, I was just going to come in agreement with that. I think it sort of felt right when she took the chair at the end. You kind of thought, actually, why haven't they done that before? You're right. It's like it was unbalanced, and then when she did that, it kind of sort of clicked. You thought, oh yeah, this is really how it should have been.
Yeah, exactly. So is that your hand up?
Oh, yeah, it was sort of a hand. No, I was just going to say it felt fine until she said "Let's fly" at the end. To me, I thought that was.
I'm into the moon.
Yeah, it was.
I liked that.
That was a joke. That was an in joke, though. But that was an in joke.
I know it was.
You know that.
Why was it in joke? I don't know why.
Because at the beginning of the season, the other captain, Saru, was trying to work out what his phrase should be, whereas Pike was punch it or something like that. And then Picard is famous for engage, and Saru wanted his own thing, and no one could quite figure it out. So hers was.
Yeah, it was funny. I'm assuming you're right. I'm assuming she won't say it at every opportunity, because I think that could sound a bit naff when she does it in the next series. But if it was just a one-off kind of layer closer, I like the idea of it. But it was quite funny. But, yeah.
Adam, you must be pleased that your favourite character has gone back home and now is not captain.
Oh yeah. Well, the fact that he's not in it, and I was watching it that he transformed, wasn't he, into like a normal
human
person?
Yeah.
Was it just the makeup team just got fed up with seeing him and just was like, no, we're just going to have you as a human.
I actually
can't be bothered anymore.
I think he worked better. I think he worked better as a human.
Yeah. No, I noticed that. It's the way he, this is weird, the way he pronunciates and talked, it kind of came across better, and he was just sort of had more gravitas as a human. Maybe
I actually think he's doing a lot of facial. He's doing a lot of facial acting, which was getting lost in the makeup. And so when they removed the makeup, you could see the real humanity behind his humanity, if you know what I mean. And actually, ironically, I still think it would be I still think he's a weak captain, but I do think his character was better as a human, which is ironic. So yes, Simon, I really like what you've picked for your highlight of the year. Lots of Star Trek, more of it, and we've got more of it coming with Picard literally round. Well, actually, before we move on to Tal, is Picard round the corner? I thought it was going to be coming, but I don't know if COVID's delayed the whole thing.
I think it probably has delayed it. I don't know when it's out. I know the next thing on my list is for this month is Lower Decks. I know that's out end of this month. I'm not sure when Picard's out.
And the other one that you were mentioning is the one with Pike, which is I've forgotten what it's called, but I can't wait for that, because that's on the Enterprise, and that's and it's got Spock in it, so that'd be really
and Pike is fantastic, or this version of Pike that we saw in the last season of Discovery. Great character, very cool. It could be a really, really good show. And just to finish off Star Trek, with so many shows coming, I hope that they find a way to give each show a different feel. Because as you said before, Stephen, I think you've got to be careful of overkill on a particular type of show. So they need to vary them. They all need to feel quite different. Or maybe we will, even me, get bored of Star Trek. But we'll see.
Yeah, and actually, and that will tie back to something we've all discussed on previous discussions. They've got to be really careful with their production techniques. In what we mean by that is, as we've discovered, despite her jumping 1,000 years in the future, the user interface she seems to be using on the computers doesn't seem that dissimilar to that which Picard is using.
I think they've just dropped all that now. They don't care. We're just going to get things set anywhere. They're just going to go, this is 1,000 years before, this is 2,000 years. Yeah, they've all got it. They're using a keyboard. These guys are using a holographic display. It'll just be all better off. You can just use whatever you want.
But if potentially, but I think if they take care with that stuff, it will add value to the fact that there are different stories. If they don't take care with it, it will actually add to the potential of fatigue, because it will seem too similar.
But do you think that because I've been seeing on Twitter, we should mention, by the way, that we're now on Twitter.
We're now on Twitter.
At 4 Men in a Wormhole on Twitter. there's been a lot about the DC universe now going into the extended multiverse, and we've obviously got Marvel going into the multiverse. And I just wonder whether I know Star Trek hasn't announced the kind of multiverse, but I just wonder whether telling multiple stories in different ways, just audiences are just going to get more attuned to that. And so whether Star Trek really pays much attention to its timeline, or just decides to tell different stories with different characters at different times, and just goes, just enjoy it.
Star Trek already have Sorry, Tal, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think of all the shows, I think Star Trek will try and be reasonably true, just because they have such a loyal fan base. I think with that look at this stuff, and I think they will. I mean, like I say, they're not going to get it right all the time, and it's difficult to keep track of with so many different shows going on. But I think they'll try and keep each one of them distinct and keep them sort of so that they keep them all varied, really.
So, Tal, over to you. What's been your highlight 2020?
So tying in with that, or not really tying in, I mean, Star Trek's obviously a big one for me for the year, but I think mine's a more general thing, which is really Disney Plus as a whole. Which I know other streaming services are available, but I got Disney Plus because of The Mandalorian, just because I obviously wanted to watch the first series, with the semi-intention of actually possibly binning it after The Mandalorian, just because I didn't really know what else was on it, and I just thought, there'll be a gap and all this sort of stuff. And of course, then my kids decided to all get back into Marvel, which got me back into Marvel in terms of seeing them all. And I hadn't, obviously, when I had originally seen the Marvel films, I'd just seen them in release order, and then of course having the luxury of having everything on a streaming service just allows you to watch them in the order that's a bit more, we watched them then in chronological order in terms of, so we started with Captain Marvel, and then worked through, and in terms of chronological time framing. So, and then they've gone in, then we've all watched all the X-Men films again, so that's been amazing. It's been great to watch all those.
They're underrated, aren't they, Tal? Some of those, because I've watched a couple recently, they're actually pretty good movies.
They're all right. They're good. I mean, they're ones that actually don't work quite so well, I think, as a kind of trying to work out. They're great at standalone films, but the kids said to me, "Oh, what order should we watch them in?" And we started looking into it, and then of course, because they've got the whole first class thing, and then it's like Jean dies, and then she's not dead, and then they don't really explain why Charles Xavier dies, and then he's back to life again, and all this sort of stuff. And there are theories about why they do come back to life and stuff, but it's very tenuous, and really you almost just have to dispel it and go, like I said, just enjoy them as films. And when you do, they are actually good films. The characters are interesting, and their powers are interesting, and all that kind of stuff in terms of what they can do. And so yes, I've enjoyed that. So it's really, for me, I think COVID being what it is, we've all probably watched a bit more telly than we might have done in other years, and I think having that just happened to come along at a similar time for me. And I wasn't really massively into all the streaming services before that. I mean, obviously now I've got Netflix and Amazon as well, but I just think I think that's been quite a nice thing to be able to just sit down, and as a family as well, to sit down and just go through. And we also did all the Star Wars films as well, so we've done everything in the whole Star Wars. Except Rogue One, actually. That's the only one we haven't watched with the kids yet. But everything else, all the films, all the Mandalorian, all that kind of stuff, as we've done. So again, it's been really nice being able to do that in a consolidated way, I think, as well, which is really nice.
Excellent. Excellent. I think one of the things also is that Disney Plus is really a sci-fi heaven, because you've got all the things you just discussed, plus you've got under National Geographic, you've got not only actual science programs, but you've got like a TV series about where the program to put people on the moon.
Yeah, space race.
You've also I think there may be some sort of futuristic-y what if type things, which are a mixture of science and, well, what if, and if that's not science fiction, I don't know what is. And we were discussing the other day that Disney, and because obviously Disney own tons of content, not just the obvious stuff. In America, they own Hulu. They're putting on much more content, and it will involve, it's not all sci-fi, but it will involve some sci-fi and fantasy type shows. And I think that's just going to become a really good platform for people like us who like that stuff. Adam?
Well, I was just going to say that I agree with. I think with that Disney Plus going through, we did the same thing in lockdown, the first lockdown, to go through all the Marvel movies chronologically, and then just to get into that was just a really nice thing to do. And I think we might not have been doing this podcast if we hadn't just all been watching so much sci-fi or had time to watch so much sci-fi. So
now we got all the other Marvel stuff to look forward to, which obviously so that's the thing. I won't be getting rid of my Disney subscription.
No, I've just signed up again for that reason. Yeah.
4 men in a wormhole. Moving on, we're going to now discuss Doctor Who, because we haven't given Doctor Who too much time on this on 4 Men in a Wormhole so far. But I'm going to hand over to Tal to dive in and look back at Doctor Who perhaps over this year, and specifically to talk about the Christmas special. But you can go further back and maybe give an idea of what's been going on in the world of Doctor Who, and how you think the show is sitting at the moment and the health of it.
Am I doing this? Am I? Okay.
We're just going to sit here. I'm just going to check Twitter while you dive in.
I'm going to get a cup of coffee.
Simon will put me right. Simon's better placed with it. He's a bigger Whovian than me. But I mean, starting with the New Year's special, I did enjoy it, but I would always say that I think the New Year's specials as a whole aren't a very good indicator of the series of a Doctor Who series. I think some of them have been great over the years. Some of them have been quite hit and miss. Some of them miss the mark a bit. They tend to because they're used to sometimes introduce a new assistant or whatever, and sometimes they just don't really tend to have enough opportunity to kind of develop the story, either a storyline or a character, because they have to be their one standalone thing. I think what was really great, if we could just go back to modern Doctor Who times, if we start with David Tennant, and I know there's a huge history before that, so I know there'd be a lot of people maybe who probably go, well, that's not real Doctor Who. But for me, obviously, that was the kind of the reboot, in the sense that they'd had other attempts to reboot it with Christopher Eccleston and things like that, but the McGann, but one version. But I think for me, the David Tennant, the way they kind of built it from there onwards, and I loved every sort of Doctor, from David Tennant, Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi. I think they've been great right the way through. But the way there was a lot of attention to the overarching storyline, which again, Simon knows the timelines and everything a lot better than I do, in terms of the whole Beowulf stuff that happened and everything that was kind of like the references that happened within it, and there was a lot explained about the Doctor's, again, timeline, talking about timeline a lot, but obviously being a Time Lord and the way that he's as old as he is and how long he'd been around for. They made a real effort to do that, and I think a lot of that's down to the writing of Russell T Davies. But yes, Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in just to say that actually I feel the same. Obviously, I did had a history with Doctor Who as a child, but then really got back into it. But looking at, I think the writing is key to the Doctor Who's, and it's the Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat era, which was kind of from sort of Ecclestone, Tennant, Smith, and then towards with Capaldi as well. But really, I think Russell T Davies in particular, I think those stories that he wrote there were just brilliant and just stand out. And I just don't think the current Doctor has just got the strength of storytelling that they had in that time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the peak of storytelling actually came in the Matt Smith era. I think that the writing there was was fantastic in terms of stories that literally ran for 2 or 3 years, but you didn't even know it was. And the stuff they did with River Song and the Silence and the Crack in the Wall and how that all led up to his final episode. It's just fantastic writing, and I don't think it's been as good since then.
No.
I don't think it was good in the Capaldi area. I don't think it was good with Jodie Whittaker. I think that she's, as a Doctor, is becoming much better. I didn't like her in season 1. I thought she was too happy. And in season 2, I thought she was much better. I think I quite like her as a Doctor, but I don't think the writing's been as good for her. And so it's not been as I don't think it's been as gripping the last couple of years.
Yeah, I was going to say that exactly with Jodie Whittaker. I feel really sorry for her because she's a brilliant actress. You know, and having seen her in Broadchurch and things like that, where she obviously was, I mean, it's a completely different type of show, completely, but you know, she's certainly got the breadth and range and capability to play it. I think she just hasn't, this particular incarnation of the Doctor just hasn't been able to develop much in the way of a personality. You know, I think she's just, you know, she's just, and the stories, you know, the stories have been okay, but, and also I don't think it's actually been helped by having 3 assistants in a way, because I think that we, like, you know, even though there were 3 different characters and they've obviously spent time within the 3 series giving each character their own focus, I think because of that it's sort of made, it's just made it a little bit disjointed, and you haven't really, and I know she talks about how her feelings of her assistants, actually more than maybe any other Doctor has, about how strongly she feels about the fact they're a family and all this sort of stuff. But even that, it's a little bit unbelievable just for me, just because I just don't feel like you've seen that really develop in a way that you did with other assistants that were there just one-on-one, I think.
I think they when I was looking at because I haven't watched all the series, but I just jumped into the New Year special, and I watched it with my youngest son, which was really great to watch Doctor Who through his eyes. And really, what became kind of, it sounds like a statement of the obvious, but to me, the New Year special was nice, but it was just like a children's story, and that seems to be how it's evolved now. The current Doctor Who is just more like a children's program, and I think Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat era had kind of did that thing where they managed to tell stories to different audiences and managed to elevate it. Whereas I look at the current one, and it was like it just felt like a children's program introducing sci-fi concepts, and not really much there for more of the adult viewer. But maybe that's what it's intended to be, and maybe that's
a lot of the original programs were, I mean, you know, when we were growing up, we were kids obviously enjoying it, but it was on, you know, BBC at you know, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when, you know, all the kids,
a children's program.
It was, I guess, but you know, I think you're right. I think they're having the overarching stories and having the more complicated timelining with the whole River Song thing and everything like that, you know, did add an extra bit of interest to it and made it, you know, much more.
Don't forget the Harry Potter Easter egg, because in the Christmas special, did anyone catch that?
Remind me what that was.
Well, I felt there was a Harry Potter. It was my interpretation, because when she's in prison at the start, she starts to tell herself a story while she's lying there in prison. She's supposed to be there for years and years, isn't she? And she starts telling the story of Harry Potter. She starts telling the story that she mentions Privet Drive and being under the stairs or something, and then she gets interrupted. But then the whole storyline of the New Year special was about Daleks and not having pure Daleks, and then being mutants, and so there was Daleks wiping out other Daleks for not being pure bloods, which to me was kind of a mirror of a lot of the themes of Harry Potter, and I felt that there was an intentional reference to Harry Potter in the cell because of the Daleks and the mutant and the cleansing and all of that was going on. I don't know if anyone else. I haven't Googled that to know whether that was an intentional.
No, I've seen headlines that I've seen articles, but I haven't gone into them. But you've talked about a reference, and I didn't get it actually. But I think you're probably right. In fact, I'm sure you're right, Adam.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was interesting.
I'm more dive in at this point, I guess. The problem I've had with Doctor Who over the years is I think, Adam, you kind of hit the nail on the head, if that's the right phrase.
I think I did.
He's but I'm sure if Carl said it, he would say it in a better way.
I'm sure Carl.
Yeah. A few episodes back. It was originally a children's show, and when the BBC relaunched it, especially as with the McCann one, which I still think was a good production. I don't know if it was the best storyline, but it was a good quality production because it was co-funded by an American, and maybe HBO, I can't remember, but it was co-funded by the Americans. And they decided at that point that Doctor Who could be as big as Star Trek. and they decided at that point, or even X-Files, they decided that Doctor Who could be a mainstream international property sold around the world, which would be Britain's premier sci-fi show that could compete in the world of, not that it existed then, but The Expanse, Star Trek, and Babylon 5, and all the other big shows that have been around over the years. And obviously, after the McGann one, they then took it back in-house, and they did Christopher Eccleston and then Neil Tennant, but it's never had the budget to
Can
make...
I just correct you there? It was David Tennant, not Neil Tennant.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Because Neil Tennant is from Pet Shop Boys.
That's right,
but I have to add a detail here that David Tennant is only called David Tennant after Neil Tennant, that he changed his name, picked up Smash Hit, saw a thing about Neil Tennant and thought, I'm going to change my name.
There you go. And Neil Tennant used to work at Smash Hit before he became a famous singer. So, but the point is, it's, you know, the Christmas special, which is the one where they save all the money. I don't think there was a time, apart from the mini riot, which was still filmed, I'm sure, on an industrial estate round the corner from here, was you know, there's never more than 3 or 4 people on a screen at once. And
it's COVID though, isn't it?
It's been COVID for Doctor Who for the last 10 years on that basis, Tal. They just, you know, there's one thing suspending your disbelief because it's sci-fi. There's another thing suspending your disbelief because there's no money. And there's, to me, and that's why it still feels like a children's TV show. Not only is it the writing.
I'm gonna disagree with you.
It's so. Hold on.
Oh, let him disagree now. Come on, you've said it. Let him disagree now.
Disagree in a minute. There's hardly.
I've already disagreed.
And the baddies are statues made of polystyrene, which you know, it's just, I find it really hard to buy into. Go on, Simon, disagree.
Well, I'm disagreeing with you on 2 points. So one, actually, I was impressed with the quality of this episode because they were showing it in ultra high definition if you watched it on the BBC iPlayer, and I was worried that because Doctor Who often looks cheap, they don't worry about looking cheap. They don't spend a lot of money on production, at least historically haven't. And I was worried it was going to look awful in ultra high definition on a big screen. It didn't. I thought that they spent some money on this episode in making sure it didn't look cheap. And so that's my first point. And the second point is Doctor Who is not a children's show. It's a family show, and it should be written with these sort of multiple layers for everyone to enjoy. It sometimes turns into a children's show, but that's not what it should be, right? It was always written as a show that you'd sit there and watch with your family.
Yeah,
when I grew up watching it with my dad, and now.
Well, my point, Simon, is it's not working. It is a children's show, which is why Adam made the comment he made. But and there's two reasons why. One, and which Adam can speak to better than me because I can't compare the previous writing, but the writing seems to be quite childlike presently. I mean, the quality. I mean, I have problems remembering lines. Like, I write songs, and I actually have a processing problem. I think I could remember the lines if I was an actor on that show, because hardly was saying anything, right? And then all the money went on Mr. Big from Sex on the City, which is why he had to be in every scene. He actually served no purpose. I mean, his only purpose was he's the boss of the company, and actually the person who does the nasty stuff was the underling, right? But he then had to be in every scene because they paid a fortune for him. But he served no purpose to anything. He goes in negotiation with Daleks, but that doesn't go anywhere. And then they rescue him, and so all the money's gone on him. There's never hardly anyone on the set, and there's just no feeling of this exists in a real believable world, and that's my issue with it.
I just have to say though that on lines that he was really good in it. I don't know what the actor's name is, but the kind of Mr. Big, I thought he was really good, and he had the best one-liner as well. Because at the one when he went to the Dalek factory, he looked around. He went, "How did you raise all the purchase orders for all this equipment?" I just thought that line was just brilliant. I mean, obviously not for the children, but
he had the best lines. He had the best lines, but if you actually analyse his character, he didn't need to be in it after, but they had to because they paid a fortune for him to be in it. I just find it disappointing. I just wish they went and got an American team in and did it on a bigger budget. And you know what? I'd probably enjoy it because I like the basic concept of Doctor Who, by the way. I'm not anti this, like I probably enjoy it better in a book form because my imagination would do a better job than the BBC. So
I agree with what you're saying, but I think you're saying it through the lens of the New Year special. And I think if you look at everything from like David Tennant up to Jodie Whittaker, it is a different level of quality. They did spend more money on those ones as well, but I think they got the production level right on it, in the sense that I'd have been a bit disappointed, and maybe that's just me being nostalgic, but I think I would have been a bit disappointed if they'd have turned it into like a Marvel level of effect.
Adam.
I just wanted to make a few things that I quite liked about it. I quite liked the fact that the Daleks were like RoboCop. I thought basically there was a RoboCop kind of thing going on with the Daleks. I quite like that. Also, the inside of the Daleks as facehuggers. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't think I've ever done that before. But there seems to be like a direct Aliens reference there.
Yeah,
to that.
Yeah, they did do that in a couple of series ago, didn't they? I think there were
I think we've seen it before.
They'd brought them, but yeah.
It did remind me of that. Then there was because that obviously just reminded me of Aliens, or Alien, and then we had in Mandalorian the Baby Yoda in that ice cave with all the eggs, and he was eating one of the eggs, and as soon as you see all the eggs, you just kind of know, well, that's there's going to be some aliens in there, some xenophobes or whatever they are, and then I thought it was quite interesting that he opened and ate one of them, and then we had the scene from Harry Potter from the Enchanted Forest with Aragog the spider, kind of just replayed in Mandalorian. I just quite like I like that kind of imagery of the two things.
Well, that may be in a direct reference point, but anyway, so I think we will conclude our discussion on Doctor Who. 4 Men in a Wormhole. So moving on, we're going to move on to our regular segment called Tarl's Feature. Tarl, do you want to take us through the 2 combatants in this week's Tarl's Feature?
Indeed, I would. Personally, I think this one this week is very one-sided, but you guys might disagree. So I'd be interested to see whether or not actually there is a fair fight to be had. But
Can I disagree now? Can I disagrate now?
Yeah, go for it, Adam.
I'm just putting it out there. I disagree now.
Good. I'm glad we could agree on that. So basically, I'm going to suggest, because we're obviously talking all things Doctor Who, it would be remiss of us not to have Doctor Who as one of our fighters in one corner. So in the blue corner is going to be Doctor Who, and then in the red corner with his cape, I think it's cape red. I can't actually remember. I don't know.
Yep.
Doctor Strange in the other corner. So
can I just correct you? Maybe that is it Doctor Who in that corner, or is it the Doctor? I mean, you have to make that clear.
Good point. Yeah, it's the Doctor.
It's the Doctor versus Doctor Strange.
I have a question
versus Doctor Strange, and Al the Doctor, not the Doctor from the other timeline, and all that stuff.
I got a question for you, Doctor Who experts. What are the powers of the Doctor, and what equipment does the Doctor have?
He's very good at running away, and he has a sonic screwdriver which he can point and shine a light in things' eyes normally and make a very funny noise.
Also, the piece of paper,
psychic paper.
Psychic paper.
But the whole point of Doctor Who and the Doctor is that she doesn't win the day with weapons. No, it's with it's with the brain. Yeah, absolutely. So there isn't much in the way of technology other than the psychic paper, the sort of screwdriver, and not forgetting the TARDIS as well. But yeah, it's an interesting matchup because I so want Doctor Who to win this, but I'm just like in my head.
I think hands down, Doctor Who would win. Doctor Who would win. Doctor Strange.
Oh, there you go.
He thinks he's the brightest person in the room. That's his shtick, isn't it? Always thinks he's the cleverest person in the room.
He is though.
The Doctor, though, is the cleverest person in the room, and if anyone's going to outsmart Doctor Strange, it would be the Doctor. He'd use Doctor Strange's own foibles against him and trick him or fool him, and Doctor would win.
But doesn't the Doctor rely on the TARDIS, which is all about the way it moves through time?
Well, sometimes he does. Sometimes he just reconfigures
Doctor
some things.
Strange is the guardian of time. Doctor Strange controls time.
He has a wrist thing. So Doctor Strange could just kind of manipulate time, a bit like Captain Jack Harkness has that kind of.
No. Doctor Strange has the actual green stone of time.
Yeah, but then he does it with his.
Yeah. But he can actually control time, can't he?
Well,
I just think Doctor Strange would just reset it every time, and then I think it would be a stalemate. To be honest, I think it could probably be a draw.
Oh, so you've moved from where you were. Saying
I have moved. We could end up with a draw here, just because I think they'll just both keep manipulating time and just keep doing the same thing over and over.
But Doctor Strange, I think, is faster at manipulating time. The Doctor, I could just think they're in a battle, and so in the battle itself, it's kind of like all of Doctor Strange sort of weird mystic arts and weapons and cape and portals. The Doctor's there with the sonic screwdriver. So Doctor Strange, I think, wins the almost like the physical one-on-one battle bit. And then if you move into the who can manipulate time better, I think Doctor Strange does that better as well. He just sort of waves his arms around or goes into some. He's whizzing about through time far more easily than the Doctor, who has to go. Hang on a minute, I'm just going to get into my TARDIS, and I go close the door, crank up some handle, press some buttons, hope to end up in the right point of time in the right place. And I don't know. I agree with you, Adam, that the Doctor is the cleverest in the room, but I'm looking at this battle and I'm thinking that Strange wins it.
Can I just say though, that is one of my complaints about Doctor Who when I'm watching any series of Doctor Who is how few episodes or storylines actually involve time. Like the ones that do, like are my favourite ones. Ones like the Weeping Angels, when it's all about time, being sent back in time, being stuck in time. I think that they're just brilliant. But then so many episodes, she has got a TARDIS, and then time just flows linearly in a linear fashion, and then that's it. So that is one of my beefs. But
I think it's worth remembering that Doctor Strange is also a martial arts expert. So should he get close to the Doctor, he's just
Doctor Strange a martial arts expert.
Yeah, all his early training before we can do all the magic, they're learning martial arts. So he's
I'm sorry. I'm still going with the Doctor.
I think
Should we take a vote? Are we going to vote?
We're going to vote, but I'm going to go first. I normally go last. I'm going to say Doctor Strange. I'm sorry. Maybe it's my the Doctor Who stuff, but I'm going Doctor Strange.
Well, I'm going Doctor Strange as well. Much as I'd love the Doctor to win this one, I'm going Doctor Strange.
Adam?
But I've said it's going to be the Doctor. I'm not going to be convinced even if you three say Doctor Strange.
At this point, I could actually make it a stalemate and make it a draw. But I actually think I'm going to go for Doctor Strange. I just think he's just too quick and he's a bit too. And the Doctor does get into a pickle and he does have to run away a lot. And I just think running away from Doctor Strange isn't going to really cut it, personally.
No, because he can change the floor in front of you, so you end up in front of him again. Think what he does with Thor when Thor comes round to his place. Yeah, so I think. That's just one of the things he does. There you go. Well, on that bombshell, where the learned one has been proven to be outvoted, of course he won't accept he's wrong, and we've decided that Doctor Strange can be the Doctor. That concludes this episode of Four Men in a Wormhole. I'd like to thank Adam for joining us.
Thank you, Stephen. It has been my pleasure as always. I'm now going to leave and learn some more.
Absolutely, because then it can be even more learned. Simon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and goodbye.
And Charles Silverman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. See you next time.
And this is me, Stephen Gurevitz, signing off from the Wormies, which produce Four Men in a Wormhole. Boom, 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 boom. 4 Men in a Wormhole.